Guys, I am so excited to be with you here today, and I'm going to be chatting all about my secret to running a profitable business. And this episode isn't going to be full of fluff, and it's not going to be full of just random facts and things that worked for me. It is literally one piece of framework that I use in my business. And it all started from a book, which I'm sure some of you have heard and maybe you haven't heard of, but it is called Profit First. And I literally have my computer here. So I'm going to tell you, it's by Profit First, a book by Mike Michalowicz, who has written several books on how to be more organized, how to be more profitable in business. But I read this book because I'll never forget in 2018, sitting in my design studio. I had my shop going, or I had a design studio in Dubai. I had one in Dallas and I had one in Houston. In 2018, I was just like, what are we doing? Like, I literally felt like I was bleeding money. I was like, okay, and I came to the realization, I will make more money if I sat on the couch with my cat than I would if I went to work. And it was literally because when I was building my businesses, I started Dubai and then I moved to Houston, and my whole thought process was, okay, well, Dubai is going to sustain Houston. And then I moved to Dallas because I became Fairmont Hotels and Resorts artist in residence. And I was like, okay, great. So Houston is going to sustain Dallas. And there was this whole game plan behind it. And even though I was making great money with all my studios, I wasn't able to keep any money. And there's a big difference between making sales and being profitable. So the thing is, if you're making lots of sales, good on you, you know how to sell. And selling is so important because, like, I tell everyone on my team and my clients that if you don't know how to sell, you'll never touch a stem. So it doesn't even matter how amazing you are as a designer. If you don't actually know how to sell that, then unfortunately, you're probably not going to be designing as much as you really want to. So you can make sales, that's great. But being profitable is so key in order to be sustainable. And sustainability is the name of the game. I mean, we saw what happened in 2020. There was no sales being made. So a lot of companies had to rely on their profits. And so in 2018, when I'm sitting at my desk and I'm realizing, like, what am I doing? I'm literally building these businesses and making these sales, but I have no idea where the money is coming from. I'm not bringing home the amount of money that I want to bring home to my family. I turned to a book called Profit First. Profit First by Mike Michalowicz. Highly, highly recommend. And I remember when I read this book, I laughed out loud, not once, not twice, but probably every single chapter, and just thought, how am I ever going to do this? And here is the breakdown. If you're like, Francesca, give me the cliff notes. I'm here because I want to know your secret to running a profitable business. This is the formula. Okay, you ready? You can get out a piece of paper if you want, and you can write it down. First and foremost, you need to set up, wait for it, don't cringe, 5 business bank accounts. I know, sounds crazy, right? Like, whoever told you to do that? Let me guess, nobody. But I'm going to tell you why this is game changing and why it's so important to do that. So first and foremost, you are going to open your business checking account, which you probably already have one if you have a floral design business. And this business checking account you have, you're going to now call it income. So in the income checking account, if you're writing on your little piece of paper here, you are putting 100% of all your money into your income business account. You're like, great, Jessica, I'm already doing that. Easy peasy, step 1, done. Okay, but I'm going to guess the most your expenses come out of this bank account as well, correct? Not anymore. So now you're going to set up 4 more accounts, and I'm going to tell you what they are so you can write them down on your piece of paper. The next one is going to be, nobody's going to guess it, so I'm just going to tell you it's going to be called profit. Yes, that's correct. We are actually going to pay ourselves, pay our business before we pay anybody else. Because you want to know why? Because that's why we're in business and we want to stay in business. And in life, in school, we were taught revenues minus expenses equal profit. Can I get some claps, some hearts? Let me know you're still here. Like, honestly, how many people have heard that over and over? Revenue minus expenses equal profit. All we're doing, this is literally a thought change. It's literally just changing your mindset. We are flipping the equation. So we are doing profit. We are taking our profit equals revenues minus expenses. Okay, great. So profit, that is your second bank account. So your first priority is I need to make the sale. I need all my money to go on my income account. My second priority is I need to make sure that my business is being paid. My third priority is owner's comp. That's compensation. I call it owner's comp. You're now making sure that you will be paid, because why does that matter? Well, because guys, this is not a hobby. This is called a business, and we want to bring money home to our people that we want to take care of because we love them. We call them our family members, whether you have a cat or 20 children. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you're taking money home from your business. Your business is being paid to make sure it's sustainable, and you're being paid to make sure that you still want to show up for the job. Just keeping it real around here. Okay, so I know you don't have a lot of time, so we're going to dive straight into account number 4, and that is taxes. Because you know what? The government really doesn't like it when you don't pay your taxes. It's kind of frowned upon. Like, they send you nasty messages, they fine you, they don't like it. And you know what? I'm happy to pay taxes because it allows me to make more money, and I'm fine with that. But what I'm not fine with is not setting aside the money to pay for taxes, because that's an issue. And that happened to me in 2017 when I got a nice tax bill that I was not prepared for and had to literally go into my savings and scrape up all the little pennies underneath the couch cushions to pay for my taxes. And that is when I realized we cannot do that again, because again, that would be having a hobby. That is not a business. So we need to make sure that we are setting aside money for taxes. And last but not least, we're talking about 5 bank accounts here for your business, is your OPEX. Now we can talk about your expenses, because we've talked about your sales, we've talked about saving money for your business, we've talked about paying yourself, we've talked about paying the government, and now we're going to go pay all the other people. And that is your operating expenses. I call it OPEX. So these are the 5 bank accounts. I follow the profit first method to make sure that my business is running profitable. That's extremely important to me. So now you're like, okay, great, Francesca, I know that 100% of our money went into the income account, but how do we divvy up the rest? So this is personal preference. And what I'm going to do is share a little bit of my story and a little bit of how I view it and how I have decided to split it up, but it's really up to you. And I do highly encourage you to read this book to better understand how you should be allocating your money. I am not a tax specialist, but I am just simply sharing with you what works for me. So let's talk about profit. So profit, when I first looked at this, it was actually a struggle for me to save 1%. I'm not going to lie. I can't remember what my operating expenses were, but there was something like, I don't know, 80%. And I just thought, there's no way that I'm going to have enough money to just like nicely set aside just for like the rainy day fund. And I started with 1%. And I kept telling myself, well, if 1% is even $10 and this is every single sale that is coming into your business. So if you are, selling something for $100, then you're putting $1 away in your profit account. And that seemed like absurd to me. At this point, my profit account is over 20%. I've built it up. I use my profit account for things like continued education, needing to pay off any kind of debt that I had on the business. My business is debt free. There's different ways that you can allocate your profit. But why this is so important is, say you need to go and buy uniforms for your staff. You want to completely redo the uniforms this year. Instead of looking at just the one bank account where all your money sits and you're like, oh, I have plenty of money to buy uniforms. Let me just buy 20 new shirts or whatever it is. You actually can go and look and see, like, how much money do I want to reinvest in my business? And do I actually already have this money set aside? Or do I want to use this money for something else? So by splitting them all up and think of like your little envelopes, it makes you think completely different and more strategic. Okay, so let's talk about owner's comp. Again, in 2017 or whenever it was, I was not bringing money home to my people. that was not an option. I was busy in growth mode, putting everything back into my business. And I thought because that would help me sustain my business further, that would help me get there faster. But what it really did was just cause me to burn out and made me second guess everything I was doing. It's very important that you are paying yourself, especially on a psychological level. And when you're sitting down with clients, whether it's your hotel clients, event clients, wedding clients, people coming into your shop, that you feel good that you're actually paying yourself on whatever you're selling. Because eventually, if you're not paying yourself, you are growing bitter and resenting your customers, and you're questioning why you're even doing this. So it is so important for your mental health to be taking home a paycheck, no matter how big or small that is, because remember, it can only go up. You just have to start, but it can only go up. So in your owner's comp, you decide how much you want to pay yourself. In the very beginning, again, for me, I think it was like 1%, 5%. That was super scary. Now we're over 20%. So right now, I've already taken out of 100%, 40% I just put in a bank account, and half the time I don't even know it's there. Like just following the system works. It's just really scary and seems a little bit overwhelming in the beginning, but trust me, there's no way that I would be here today in the position that I'm in if I did not follow this system. So next, we're going to talk about taxes. And how much do you set aside for taxes? Well, I have, my sales tax that I put in there that I take from every order. And I have my taxes that I need to pay every quarter, and everyone's taxes are different depending on where you are. So figure out how much your taxes typically are. And for me, I know that if I set aside 20%, I will be good with taxes. And guess what? Here's the amazing thing about setting aside 20%. If you don't use all that, and by the way, this is my number, your number might be completely different. So figure out your tax number, read the book, but I'm just giving you an example, is that if I don't use all the 20%, meaning that let's say I paid the government 15%, then the remaining 5% that I have saved, well, that's what I call a bonus. That is my bonus at the end of the year. So I'm happy to save 20% in my tax account because I know that I never have to worry about paying taxes ever again. And people who have paid me, they've basically paid me these taxes up front. And so I stick the money aside so I can go pay the government whenever they want to be paid. And last but not least, you have your OPEX. And everyone's business is a little bit different. But what this does is when you are determining how much money you are saving for your operating expenses, is you start realizing how much money you're actually working for to go and pay other people. So for me, I have decided that I am not paying more than 40% in my operating expenses. That is my business model. This might not work for everybody, but it's just to get your wheels turning. So what does that mean? Well, I know that 30% of my money is going towards hard goods. That is buying the flowers for my customers. That is making sure that I have everything that they have ordered. And then 10% of that has to somehow afford to pay for my employees or my contract workers, and then anything else that I have coming out. So that could be like, let's say I had a van, or let's say that I had insurance, all the things that you need to make sure that your business ticks, that it is in your operating expenses account. So for me, 40%. Now 40% is very aggressive. Let me tell you, there's a lot of times that I'm like, oh, if it was like 45 or 50, it would be so much easier. But then I have to go and say, well, where do I take that money away from? Do I go take it from the government? Probably not, because they're going to need all that money. I don't want to take it out of my own paycheck, and I don't want to take it out of the business. So how can I rethink this? And so, like I said, having these 5 bank accounts is so incredibly important when you are wanting to run a profitable business. So highly recommend grabbing the book. It's called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, deciding what percentages you are going to start at today. When I started this, I had an Excel sheet. You can get a Google Doc or numbers, whatever, piece of paper, whatever works for you. And every month, my goal was to increase my profit percentage, increase my owner's compensation percentage, and my tax percentage, decrease my operating expenses, so that way I was more balanced. And it is so incredibly important to make sure that you have that money stashed aside. Profit is not a bad thing. Profit is necessary to keep your business sustainable. Paying yourself is not a bad thing. It is so important because it means that you will continue to show up to do the work that you feel called to do, and you can support the people that you love back home. Like I said, whether that's your one cat or your 20 children, like you are called to do this work for a reason. You need to be compensated for it. And if you're doing it well, people love to pay you. And so we have to kind of like get over all the money mindset issues. And this helps so much by having the framework of the bank accounts. So you're like, okay, great, Francesca, I am ready. Let's do this. What are my next steps? So like I said, if you already have some sort of business checking account, that is already your income account. So from now on, you are going to route all your money into that one income account. Now, here's where it gets a little tricky, and banks like to charge fees on like random accounts you have. And believe me, when you go and propose this to them, you're probably going to get crickets. Just be prepared. I know when I told my CPA I was doing this, she told me how it wasn't going to work. And then 6 months later, she was like, Francesca, I'm actually implementing it in my own business, because she could see how I went from like literally 1% profit to 10. And I think it was like 6 to 8 months, which is huge for someone, especially when you're in your day to day and you're thinking in the beginning, like, how am I ever going to do this? So what I did was, usually with a business checking comes a business savings. So I made, if I remember this correctly, yes, I have to like bear with me. This is all now kind of personal, but I want to say that I made my taxes, my business savings, and then I had a personal bank account that I could also add more accounts to. And so in the end, I made sure that my taxes and my profit sat in a savings account. So this will kind of, you can write savings next to those accounts, because you're only going to hit your tax account once a month, like worst case scenario, because you're probably paying your monthly sales and use or whatever it might be. And your profit, you shouldn't really be into that account unless you are looking to invest in your business or you in yourself as the CEO in your business. So you really shouldn't be hitting those accounts. So those both can be savings, which will help you from going in there and like pulling money out of them, because we want to kind of forget about those accounts, which leads really only your owner's comp and your operating expense accounts. And those are both checking accounts. So for me, all your money from your income for the month, it can go into your owner's comp. You can pay yourself every week if you want to, every other week, at the end of the month, whatever works for you. And in your operating expense, that is a checking account that you're paying all your bills out of. So that's payroll, that's your wholesaler, or any of your expenses. That is your cell phone bill, any kind of expense in the day-to-day to keep your business alive. So I hope that you found this helpful. I am telling you, following a profit first method was a game changer in my business. It has made sure that I have stayed profitable. And when you're profitable, you are sustainable. So I did not struggle during 2020. I was prepared for it. But I can assure you, if I hadn't followed this method, if I hadn't read this book, I would not be in the position I am today. So this is kind of my secret sauce in running a profitable business. I can't wait to hear how you implement this in your own business. And I'll see you in the next episode.